Good morning, students. Welcome to today's session of marketing management. Yesterday we had just about touched promotion, but just the beginning. Today we will discuss it in more detail, and then we'll try to touch upon the other aspects of the marketing mix. Promotion, as we had mentioned earlier, is one of the 4 P's of the marketing mix. It basically concerned with the communication which the suppliers, marketeers have with the existing customers or the potential customers. They try to communicate about the product. The method used could vary. Those elements are called, taken together as promotion mix, just like a marketing mix has 4 P's. Promotion mix has 4 components: advertising, publicity, personal selling, and sales promotion. How do we communicate? There is a sender and there is a receiver. What we want to convey has to be encoded, that has to be expressed in a particular way. Then there is a medium of transmission, how that will be conveyed, how that will be transmitted, medium. Then decoding at the end of the customer, and then the feedback. What happens is that in the process of encoding and decoding, or in the transmission, there could be transmission loss. There could be some problem in the encoding. What we want to say, the way we want to say, may not be interpreted or decoded in exactly the same way by the receiver. That is why proper research about the communication process, so that receiver receives as it was, what it was supposed to be conveyed to him, or at least as close as possible. 100% may not be possible, but as close as possible should be conveyed. So it could be by way of advertising, it could be by way of publicity material, maybe kiosks are set up, other media are used, electronic media, print media, personal visits, sales talks by the people. All that becomes part of the communication. Important part is that, as I mentioned earlier, that what you want to convey may not be interpreted in exactly the same way by the customer, the consumer. So it has to be that it should be conveyed in the language of the receiver, or conveyed by way of symbols, marks, graphics, pictures, what he understands. Because the literacy levels also make a difference. When we try to make use of all the possible components of the market promotion mix together in line along with the other elements of the marketing process, then it is called the integrated marketing communication. Integration is basically you try to integrate all the components so that overall net result is much better than if there was no synergy between the different components. Of course, the basic purpose remains to inform, to make the person aware and persuade him to buy your product. Of course, all that we have studied earlier about the consumer behavior, how the consumer receives a message, the stimuli which comes from outside, and how does he interpret, that becomes important. Advertising. By advertising, we are able to reach a much larger number of audience outside, and advertising conveys that what is available, at what rate it is available, which place it is available. The method as such is a paid method. Advertising has to be paid for, whatever medium may be used. When you try to put out an ad, whether it is in the print media or it is in the electronic media, you have to pay for it. And since you pay for it, you can control the content. It is possible for you to dictate that just such and such should be conveyed or must be included in the message, and such must be excluded from the message. But since it is through a medium and aimed at much larger audience, mass market, so it becomes non-personal method in the sense that there is no one-to-one interaction between the company and the consumer. Of course, it is not that you will be able to improve sales just by advertising, though it is the objective that sales should be improved, but it has to be with reference to the different elements of marketing mix. And the result which is obtained from the advertising may not be immediately available. It may be available in the long run, but of course, it may also depend upon the adopted method. These days, with the social media, it is maybe possible that the dissemination of what is sought to be conveyed is much faster than it used to be earlier. But still, there may be time lag between the conveying of the message and to see the results arising from that. Of course, advertising creates awareness, informs the customer, it creates knowledge about your brand, and if the customer already has a positive attitude about your product, it reinforces that and precipitates, induces him to buy the product, and it helps in building up a positive image of the company, the producer. For integrated marketing communication, different tools can be used. It could be media. Media could be newspapers, magazines, TV, radio. Direct marketing by mails, email, telephone. Of course, these days you keep getting messages on the WhatsApp or even the calls on the mobile, which are meant for the public at large. Or earlier, it used to be brochures, home shopping shows, and all. Of course, they have reduced in terms of the direct marketing mode. Then when a person goes out of home, then he sees billboards, posters, banners, put out in the market, on the roads. You go for watching a movie, you see the ads put out there in the beginning or in the intermission period, or at the point of sale. POS is point of sale itself. You will find that there will be signages, the ads put up, or maybe you have the TVs running which are giving out the details about what all is on offer, what can be availed. Digital, of course, is gaining importance over the last few years. It is becoming even more than the other physical means. Mobile, search engines, OTT platforms, websites, all they becoming part of the digital marketing. Sales promotion is basically when you offer discounts, suddenly like say festival has come, festival discount, or Independence Day, for that week, 75th Independence Day discounts, exchange offers, free samples, rebates, or lucky draws, or discounts for buying a certain minimum quantity. All those become part of the sales promotion methods. But what is effective advertising? You advertise, but by advertising, are you able to realize the goals for which you had set out? What was the basic purpose? What was the basic need which you envisaged when you started advertising? It could be, like you wanted to have a much larger market share. You wanted to increase the sales and increase sales resulting in the much higher profit margins. But whether it has been actually achieved, it may or may not happen. And of course, it will be with reference to the budget earmarked by the firm. Resource crunch may be there, so each firm is not able to put out an advertising budget in the same way which you will like to. So it may be possible that though you feel the need more, you want to convey, but because of the resource crunch, you have to limit your advertising media. Maybe you may not be able to have multiple media. You may be able to have only one or two media. Of course, then the choice will be, the one which costs less, which media costs less and has a much higher reach. That is where the digital marketing, SMS, WhatsApp, social media have had an upper edge over the other means of advertising. Important point is that it should be in the language which the audience understands, and it should have a more meaningful reach, and it should be credible. It is not just putting out an ad. If you put out an ad and the customers don't believe what you are saying, then there is no point. So if the advertising lacks credibility, then the basic purpose is not achieved. People may go through, people may read, but people may not react the way it was intended to. It may not result into the increased sales. Publicity. In the normal parlance, we use it interchangeably, but basic difference between publicity and advertising is that publicity is not paid for. The sponsor doesn't pay for it. Advertising sponsor has to pay. Of course, it is also non-personal in the sense that there is no personal one-to-one touch between the person who is giving the message and the receiver. But for the meaningful dialogue to happen, it is as important. It can happen. The way it can happen is that, like say, you have your annual general meeting, and there is a news item, and the news item is put out in a positive way. So that has more positive impact than the ad put out by the marketeer, because customers know that this is not paid for, and therefore you had no control over the content of it. And since it is coming from a third party, third source, then it is likely to be more credible than the ad which is put out by the marketer himself, or which he had a full control because he was paying for it. So from that point of view, there are common points. It is non-personal difference. It is not paid for, but all other impact is more or less similar. Reach is mass. It reaches out to larger number of people. Promotion, again, in a way it is a repetition. It has come earlier also, that the methods which are used by the firm to provide incentives maybe to the customers and even to the other business partners, like to the distribution channels, the wholesalers, retailers. You give incentives to them that if you sell more than a certain quantity, you will be given this much extra commission or some other benefits. And it may be by way of discounts, it may be by way of gifts. So all those which becomes part of this kind of activity becomes part of the sales promotion. Of course, sales promotion is short term. It doesn't continue for long. On different occasions, like festivals, some other say companies say that it is our 10 years of our working or silver jubilee of our company. So we are coming up with some events where we are giving discounts, offering discounts to the customers. Personal selling. Personal selling is person to person, one to one. For certain items which are of highly technical nature and industrial goods are sold to the business houses, personal selling is normally used. Here, where the salesman goes and presents to the potential customer, tells about the product, maybe give a demo, and makes the person familiar, clarifies doubts of the customer at site itself immediately. Whereas in case of advertising and publicity, if the customer have to want to have a query and want to clarify some point, they have no immediate means. They may be able to write to customer care or call the customer care number. But in case of personal selling, this can be answered immediately by the person who has come to sell the product. And therefore, the results in personal selling, if the salesperson is good caliber, results are much better. But why personal selling is not the preferred mode is because effort involved is much higher. The expenses involved are much higher. Reach is limited. A person on his own may be able to cover maybe 5-6 customers in a day, at the most 8-10, not more than that. So comparatively, if you see all the four components of the promotion mix, we find that positive point about advertising is that it has a mass reach, which is a large number of people, and since it is paid for, marketer has a control over what will be conveyed, and per unit per contact it is less expensive. But putting out an ad is not easy. It costs quite a lot of money. So that becomes a limitation of the advertising. And since it is one way from marketer to the consumer, there are no means of knowing the reaction of the customer. It's hard to measure the results achieved from that. Publicity is similar. It is mass reach, inexpensive, but limitation is that there is no control over the message. And cost may be there, though you are not directly paying for it, but there may be hidden costs. Maybe the channels which are publicizing your this thing, say newspapers, maybe you have to keep them in good humor. That may be, and again, the controlling the results, not measuring the results is not easy. Personal selling, immediate feedback is there. That is a plus point. Highly focused, highly targeted, and depending on the type of customer, you can customize it. You may be able to persuade a customer much better than other means. But limitation is that limitation in terms of the how many contacts can be covered in a day and expenses per contact. Promotion, plus point, mass reach, direct impact, because immediately you are putting out a discount, then people are buying on the spot, and therefore results can be easily measured. But it may have a negative impact. Limitation is that it may have a negative impact if it is indulged on a regular basis. So it can be done once in a while is okay. Otherwise it loses the credibility. IMC it is same. What are the factors which will affect that? What kind of integrated market communication strategy you will have? Of course, which kind of product or service you are advertising, that will be this thing. What is your target group, the market segment which you are targeting, their characteristics, their geographical characteristics, their demographic characteristics, what we had talked of in consumer behavior, overall budget which the company has, the product life cycle stage of the product, and like we had talked of that at different stages of the product life cycle, the combination may have to be changed. And there may be some regulations from the government also, like what can be publicized. The basic thing about the government regulation is that the advertising should not be misleading. It should not be trying to convey something to the customer which the product actually doesn't have. It is all right to create a positive image, but trying to create a positive image about the product by trying to attribute characteristics or the quality which is non-existent, which doesn't exist, that is regulated. There are restrictions by the government on that. Of course, the social media of late has become one of the most important platforms for the communication. It is for purpose of creating the brand awareness, for creating interest. And one plus point in the social media is that the geographical boundaries are not a restriction. It is possible to reach a large number of customers in a big way. And internet penetration has gone up, so the reach is becoming much more wider, and accordingly the probable benefits are also increasing. There are different models which are gone into by the advertisers. The most common, we are not going into all because of the time constraints, but the one which we are looking at is AIDA. It is a acronym made from AI. A stands for attention, I stands for interest, D for desire, and A for action. Attention basically means that how to attract the attention of the customer. How do we attract the customer to our product? Then how to increase his interest. Getting attracted is one thing, but then he should get interested in buying the product. So how to increase that interest level? That is the next stage. Then make the customer actually desire it. And end goal is, the objective is that customer should desire your product, he should desire to buy it. And action, that you push him to actually initiate the action to buy the product. Unless he purchases, finally, the first three activities, attention, interest, and desire, are of no use if it doesn't result into final action of actually buying the product. Now, if you have to decide an advertising campaign, what are the questions one must ask? The advertiser has to ask, the company has to ask. So what should be done? The first thing to be decided is what to be said. Now, what to say and to whom it is to be said, how to say it, what will you like to convey, to whom you will like to convey, and how will you convey. That is, then how often you should be doing it. In the case of communication, it has to be repeated. Saying one time doesn't register. So how often you should be doing it? Where it should be conveyed, and how much will you be willing to spend for doing that. To make these decisions, you need to choose a particular theme, or that in that theme you will convey what is to be conveyed. Then decide about the target audience, decide about the frequency, and do a sales analysis, and accordingly decide the budget level. How it will be done? For theme or the copy, you do the positioning studies. We have talked the positioning of the product. We do the studies to find out the perception in the mind of the consumer. Whom to convey? You will have to decide which particular market segment you should be targeting. Like say, suppose you are trying to advertise a sports product, sports shoes, or say any particular sports gear. Then what will be the best place where you should be advertising? Sports magazines, sports channels on the TV. There's no point putting out a sports related ad onto the religious channel, or say religious books, religious magazines. Like that, you have to decide to whom it should be addressed. For that, you will need to do the segmentation studies. Then, how much repetition of the message is desirable? Too frequent, it may be irritating for the customer. Very infrequent, it may not register. The customer may forget. So it has to be regular at the regular intervals. Intervals should not be too long, should not be too short. And of course, you may have to think in terms of the different marketing models to be able to find out how much budget is good enough. There again, it is that say if the budget is too less, then the repetition of the ads, the communication may be less, and then the desirable impact may not be achieved. Because the final result is that how much you have been effective in your advertising. You may put out a very good ad, but if that advertisement does not result in the bringing more sales and higher profits, then definitely the effectiveness of that advertising is low. It may not be zero, but it is definitely going to be low. So you have to have some feedback about the how to measure the effectiveness. There are means of doing that. We will not be able to go into details of that today, but it is possible and it is required that company finally measures the effectiveness of the advertisement put out by it. One of the methods which is used in this regard is, it is again an acronym, DAGMAR, DAGMAR, basically stands for Defining Advertising Goals for Measured Advertising Results. Defining advertising goals for measured advertising results. It is a marketing model which is used for effective advertising campaign to decide. Again, an acronym used is ACCA. A for awareness, C for comprehension, another C for conviction, and last A for the action. So, effective advertising should result in creating awareness. It should be easily comprehensible. It should be easily understood by the customer. It should generate a conviction that customer should feel convinced about your ad, what you are trying to convey. He should feel convinced about that, and because of that conviction, he should be willing to take action in terms of actually buying the product. Two goals of that. One is that these specific ACCA steps, they should be accomplished, and the result of that should be possible to measure the success against a specific baseline, against a yardstick. It can be done in two ways: pre-testing, post-testing. Like you put out an ad, before you put out an ad, you do some testing, or after that ad has been put up, you do it subsequent to that also. It may include, the method used for pre-testing may include the direct rating, how the customers rate your advertisement vis-a-vis the attractiveness of the advertisement of your competitor. Portfolio test, how good is the recall, whether the customer is able to recall your product, and with reference again to the your competition, and whether this recall is with the help of some aid by helping you, trying to help you remember it, or without that, it easily recall, or it may be based on some laboratory tests. Post testing is basically recognition. That you say give an ad in an advertisement, show it to the customer, take the magazine away, and then ask him to recall what was there in the advertisement. A certain percentage may be able to say that yes, they have been able to note it, and others say that yes, they have been able to associate with it. They have seen it, and then if it is possible that they have read it and most of them are able to recall it, then it is very effective. Fourth P of the marketing management, distribution management, place. We had used the term place. Basically, it is distribution management. Distribution provides three utilities: place utility, time utility, and possession utility. Like when you want it, it is produced some other place, but it is available at a place where you want it. So it creates the place utility. It is made available at the time that you want it, time utility. You take hold of it, you possess it, and then you feel good about it. That is the possession utility. So all those activities which are undertaken for creating this time, place, and possession utility in goods is part of the distribution management. It involves making the right kind of product available to the right customer at the right place at the right time. That is why distribution is effective only if it is able to be available, the product is made available to the customer when he actually wants it. If it is not available at the time, he may go for your competitor's product. Like a small example, particularly for the items which are now we buy in routine manner. We go, we have seen an ad and we go to the nearby shop, retail shop, and we ask for that particular product. He says, no, it is not in the stock. Then immediate reaction will be that what is the substitute available? You will go for the substitute. So distribution becomes important because if it is not available at the right place at the right time when the customer actually needs it, it loses its utility. There are channels. Channels refers to the methods which are used by the companies to deliver the products and services to the customers and end users. So all those participants, all those individuals who participate in the flow of goods and services from the manufacturer to the end user are part of the distribution channel. If there was no distribution channel, then how the products will be made available? Then the manufacturer may have to interact with the retail consumer directly, which becomes practically a difficult proposition. It may not be physically possible for each of the manufacturers to get in touch with each retailer. So they make use of the different channels. These channels are classified into direct channels where their customers are directly contacted, or indirect channels. Direct channels where the customer is directly contacted. There is no middleman. There is no middleman involved. There is no intermediary involved, and directly the customer is being contacted. It may involve through the postal services. These days through the internet marketing, door-to-door selling. You find that some certain salesmen will come home selling you the goods, door-to-door selling. And company will have its own showrooms where the products can be had. If more than one channel, there is more than one intermediary, one or more intermediaries used by the manufacturer, then that becomes indirect channel because the customer is being contacted through that particular intermediary. It may be only one level channel. It may be not just manufacturer, retailer, consumer. It may be two level where it is manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer, and then the customer. It could be even three when you have a agent, wholesaler, retailer, consumer. Three different levels involved. So in these intermediaries can be an individual, it can be a group, it can be an agent, it can be an organization. And those middlemen could be further divided into the agents and the merchant middleman. Agent middleman and the merchant middleman. Agent middlemen, they work on commission basis. They do not take the ownership of the product. They sell your product, but they charge what is called the facilitation fee or commission by whatever name it is called. Merchant middleman actually buys your product, stores it, and then makes it available to the consumer through the resale. By reselling, wholesaler, retailers, they become the merchant middleman. And since they are merchant middlemen, they actually charge at the rate at which they buy. They do a markup, no certain percentage, 5%, 10%, depending upon the type of product and how much margin they can enjoy, which becomes their profit. What it costs them to buy the product, they will have a markup, some additional amount they will be added, and then it will be sold to the final customers. The wholesalers know do the work of assembling the product, dispersing the product, storing the product, transportation, financing, risk taking, sorting the products, packaging the products. All these activities are undertaken by the wholesaler, and by undertaking all these activities, he relieves the manufacturer of the product from the responsibility of the undertaking all these products. If there was no wholesaler, no intermediary, then all those things, those activities will have to be undertaken by the manufacturer himself. Retailer is the one who actually interacts with the consumer, where the two channel level channels exist, both wholesaler and retailer are. Then retailer is the one who actually sells and sells in the smaller lots. Wholesalers, by very name, it is very clear that he does it in larger quantities. Retailer does it in the smaller quantities. And type of retailers may include the hawkers, you have the peddlers, the departmental stores, it will be chain stores, supermarkets, ball market, etc. Then there could be warehouse retailers where they store it and sell it from the warehouses itself. Franchisee, online retailing, different kinds of retailers are there. Which channel of distribution should you use out of these? There can be many considerations. How much coverage of the geographical area you want to have? How much promotional efforts you want to make? And at what cost? So basically, a rational decision would involve that you would like to have maximum possible coverage, geographical coverage, maximum promotional effort, and at the least cost. So you may have to take into consideration the factors which are related to the product, related to the company, the kind of market you are operating in, and what kind of action is being taken by your competition. All those considerations will have to be taken into consideration to decide which particular channel to use. Of course, it is possible that you may use multiple channels or you may use only one channel. So that the way you use the channels, it is possible that the conflicts may emerge between the different channels because of the friction. Like say if you give it to two retailers in the same area, there may be conflict between those two retailers. It's called the horizontal conflict. Or if you make use of a distributor and a retailer also, then there may be conflict between them. Any one of them may feel that the other one is being given more importance. Vertical conflict. If you use multiple channels, then between those different channels, the conflict may come up. Then these conflicts will have to be managed. They cannot be left unattended. There are different ways of tending to that. But since we are short of time, we are not going into the details. But suffice it to say that these conflicts are normal. One must not be put off by that, but take suitable measures to address these conflicts. Then we had talked of 4 P's of marketing mix, and we had talked of that the services are special kind of products. I think I mentioned that in case of services, because of the special attributes of the services, additional P's are required. As we know, all the economic activities can be divided into 3 categories: primary, related to agriculture and fishing, forestry, etc. Secondary is the manufacturing activity, mining, construction. Tertiary relates to services and distribution. Service has been defined by Mr. Kotler as an activity that one party offers to another, which is essentially intangible and doesn't result in the ownership of anything. And its production may or may not be tied to a physical product. Now, we find that as the economy grows, as the economy comes from the developing to the developed stage, the services sector grows. In the primary, when it is in the primary category, then the agriculture is predominant and the other sectors are uh, uh, not dominant. And manufacturing industry becomes dominant and the fully developed services become the dominant. Why services become dominant? One is that as the economy grows, the GDP grows up, so the income levels grow up. Individual income levels also grow up if it is equitably distributed. Then, because of this increased affluence, increased wealth, the free time available with the households, with the individuals becomes more, and they will look for the different ways of entertaining themselves via theater, sports, magazines. These days, of course, the OTT platforms and all, life expectancy has gone up. So all those activities related to the, in the later life, related to medical services, they increase. More women in the workforce means they may need the more, say, the creche for the keeping the children, the beauty aids, the clothing, and all those things. Products are becoming more and more complex. So more complex product, you may need somebody who is trained to attend to that. So that kind of service may be required, particularly say mobiles and the TVs and the laptops. You may need the help of service individuals to be able to attend to in case of any problem. More and more new products are coming into the market. You may need services for that. So all these things taken together has meant that services sector as a component of the overall economy has become more dominant. And India, of course, is now, we can say, if not fully developed, at least the semi-developed stage. So in India also, the services component of the economy is higher. Now, what are the typical characteristics of the services which makes them distinct from the products? 5 characteristics which are there. Intangibility, we'll take them up all one by one. Inseparability, heterogeneity, perishability, and ownership. What is intangibility? Tangible means something which can be touched, which can be held. Now, when we buy a product, we take possession of it, we carry it home, so we are able to hold it. That is a tangible thing. But suppose we want to travel from point A to point B. We avail that service. What do? We avail the transportation service. But we do not get possession of the train or the say bus or say taxi, which we are using for moving. So we avail the service, but we are not able to touch it. Since it is not a physical form, therefore precise standardization of that product is also not possible. And there is no change of ownership. Like a cab driver, the cab remains with the owner. You avail the service for a particular period against a certain price. Once the service has been rendered, the price has been paid for, end of it. Ownership remains with and he looks for another customer to whom to transport. So because of the same reason, it is not possible to patent a service easily. And production and consumption, the provider and the user, they have to be available. It is not possible to separate the production from the consumption. Because of this very reason, it is not possible to keep inventory of a service. Keeping inventory means basically that you produce a product, and if there is no immediate demand, you keep it in a store and make it available to the customer when demanded by them. But in case of service, suppose a bus has a seating capacity of 60 people and there are only 30 passengers. And of course, bus will move at its fixed time, particularly if it is say road transport bus, or a train will move at a fixed time. Then that unutilized capacity, the seats which are lying vacant, that capacity goes waste. It's not possible to keep that capacity in storage. No. So you find that there are, because of intangibility, there are so many features which make the product distinct from the product. And in fact, if you actually look at it, you find that most of the products, if they are at a tangent where pure service and pure product are not there. Most of the things lie in between somewhere. Like if you buy a product, you get some benefit, you get drive some satisfaction. So that satisfaction is the intangible component. So we can say that those products for whom the intangible component is less will feature in the product category, and those for which the intangible component is much higher, they will feature in the service category. Inseparability. Service cannot be separated from the person who is actually providing it. A plumber comes to give you a service, he has to be physically present to do that. Or someone else who comes to attend to a particular idea or tries to provide you a service, like say in case of a cab, the cab driver has to be available to provide you the transport service. So the producer, the person who is providing it, has to be physically available. He cannot be separated from the act of service. Heterogeneity. Heterogeneity means it's opposite of homogeneity. Homogeneity means when the things are of a uniform nature. Say you see the physical products, say a car or a bike, as they come out from the factory, each bike or car is exactly similar to the other one. So much so that to be able to identify one unit from the other, you give them engine number and chassis number in the factory itself. And once they come onto the road, then to be able to distinguish one from the other, the numbers are given by the RTO, registration number. That is what distinguishes. Otherwise, they are identical. That is what is called homogeneity. But in case of services, since the people are involved, human element is involved, so the output is not homogeneous, it is heterogeneous. One person provides a service, say in a restaurant, one person provides a service given by one waiter will be different from the service given by another waiter. And even the same person on different days may not be provide the same type of service. So it is possible that because of the human element, you may not be able to maintain that homogeneity. This is what is that makes it difference makes it different from the product category. Products are homogeneous, services are heterogeneous. Perishability, as mentioned earlier, as part of intangibility also, that the services cannot be stored and therefore they perish. Example, the train we had taken, even a cinema hall, you have certain seats in the cinema hall, but if they say capacity is 500 and only 300 seats are sold, the rest of the capacity of 200 is lost forever. So, and because of this reason, you find that the demand fluctuates for the products also. But this perishability in the case of products can be address addressed by manufacturers or providers try to address by way of making distinction between the peak period and the lean period. Peak period the demand is more, lean period demand is less. So it may be that providers charge more during the peak period and offer discounts for the lean period. Again, if you take the example of cinema hall, you find that morning shows, noon shows are priced cheaper because normally there is less demand for the seats in the cinema hall for those shows, and the demand is higher for the matinee or evening shows, when people are free. So those shows are priced higher, whereas the morning and the noon shows are priced lower. This fluctuating demand pattern aggravates this characteristics perishability, becomes more intense. And of course, we had mentioned that there is no transfer of ownership. You avail a service and you hand over the possession back to the owner, the provider. What happens because of these characteristics? What is the end result of this? That for services, you need to do little more research for those 4 P's of marketing mix also. Of course, the concept and the techniques remain the same, but the way it is conducted, the way it is done, has to be seen in the background of these 5 characteristics of services and managed managed by the marketing strategy, keeping that in mind. Now, like we had said that intangibility, the implication is that sampling becomes difficult and it is not possible to judge the quality and the value in advance. So because of that, patent or copyright is not available, so difficult to promote. How do we overcome this implication? We use brand names, we use personalities to promote that. We try to develop a reputation for that particular service. We try to emphasize more on benefits in our advertisement, in our promotion. And we try to increase the intangible component of the product, the physical representation of the product. For inseparability, implication, as you talked of, that it requires the presence of the performer, and because of that, the scale of operation has to be limited, because how many people can be attended at one time by one person. So it limits the geographical market to a smaller area. How do we overcome this implication? Is that we try to work in larger groups and we try to train more people who can perform that service. Heterogeneity, difficult to standardize the quality, and we try to overcome that by careful selection of the personnel who are providing it, and then train them adequately so that there is a certain minimum standard which is maintained. We define the behavioral norms for them, and we try to cut down on the human element as much as possible and do the automation. Now, like one typical example is like banking. What was the normal function was go to the bank, present a check, or go to the teller and then withdraw the cash. What has been done now is ATM, so that you can go insert your credit card and then draw the money. So there's no interaction with the human. So reduce the role of human element as much as possible by more and more mechanization and automation. Perishability, not possible to store. There is a problem of demand fluctuation also. And we try to overcome this by having a better match between the supply and demand by reducing price during the lean period. When the demand is low, we charge a lower price so that people are interested in buying. Ownership, we try to, the implication is that customers, they don't have the ownership. You may feel discouraged, but then we overcome it by stressing the advantages of non-ownership. Like say these days you have even the resorts which are no, which are no, which are shares are given. Earlier, say suppose only the rich could afford a summer house in say hill area, or say second house in some other area which is of tourist interest. But what has come up now is that you buy the share, like for 5 days, for 10 days, you can make use of the resort against a certain payment. You take the membership, and the advantage is that you don't have to own it, you don't have to spend that kind of money, you pay only a smaller amount and you avail the same services. You are not bothered about the safety, security, thefts, and all. So, there are certain advantages of not owning a product which can be stressed. So, it is possible to overcome these characteristics of services by certain methods which we have to be, which have to take care of. So three specific P's which are used over and above the four P's of marketing in case of services marketing are people, physical evidence, and the process. People both as a providers and people as a users. Physical evidence is when you go to say bank, you see there is a decor, some reception counter is there, the person directs you to the particular counter, you ask him. You go to a doctor, there is a place for sitting, there may be person registering the, giving you number, and then the doctor, and then the process, how actually the service is availed. So, you find that people become important, and we can try to improve upon the service providers. And the physical evidence again can be two types: peripheral evidence and the essential evidence. Peripheral is something which you can take possession of but not actually carry with you. Essential is which you are actually making use of. Now, we have been in a little of rush. It has been discussed little fast today so that we could try to cover more of the subject. We have to take leave. Thank you very much. Good day.